Hey guys, what's up? Alright, we got a video came across my feed, and what we're gonna do is I don't know, this is like the super lowest tech reaction video you've ever seen. And I'm not aiming for any kind of perfection or any kind of awards for this. But the idea and the name of the video is Reciprocal Zenith Angles versus Perspective. The Fatal Flaw Globe Defenders. Hope you will never learn. Now, um, I started recording this and then realized I hadn't turned the audio on. And I've got the audio on this time, thank goodness. So, and then I've got my trusty whiteboard here and a marker, just in case I need to do some math. And then here is the video we're going to react to. And with any luck, you'll be able to hear it just fine. Now, just for clarity's sake, again, like I said, I started watching it and recording myself and then realized the audio was off. So the first part of it is just the author making a whole bunch of claims that are completely nonsensical. And you know, if they're going to start off the movie calling the globe a space ball, it's not going to get better from there. It never does. So if you have to lead off with ridicule and mocking, you don't have an argument. Sorry, you just don't. All right, so with that in mind, let's actually hear what they have to say.
Video. You understand reciprocal zenith angles better than every spaceball shill on YouTube. Let's start with their argument in their own words.
So basically there were 6 sets of near real-time reciprocal zenith angles, and here I tabulate those results, and basically revealed approximately a minute on that line. So here's, I wanted to clarify this. I'll read this to you. The raw measurements, uncorrected for deflection of the vertical, are reference to the geoid. These measurements reveal the tilt that exists between the vertical plumb directions at the ends of the lines. In other words, if this weren't the case, the vertical plumb directions would be parallel. They would be parallel everywhere. And therefore, if you measure these zenith angles at each end of the line, they will sum to 180 degrees. But they never do. That's really true. And I encourage anybody to try this for themselves. Or if anybody has found otherwise, please get a hold of me. I'd like to see your data. Because I did see some comments that, hey, I didn't take elevation into consideration. Well, those people that are making that comment are actually wrong. You're flat out wrong. The sum of the zenith angles at each end of the line, no matter what the terrain, the sum of those should equal 180 degrees if the vertical plumb directions are parallel. So basically, I created a level line.
Okay. So it seems like the question is, if I have a planet, and excuse me. All right. So if my planet is round, I don't know if you can even see that. Maybe I'll have to go get a better marker. If my planet is round and the gravity is in the center, then if I take 2 measurements like that and measure their angle to the horizontal, then I should get a 90-degree angle here and a 90-degree angle here. But the angle between these 2 dots here is an angle which I can calculate and represents the difference in the angle between those two positions. So on a sphere, on a spherical Earth, we would expect if I added this angle, and this angle, I would get something that's greater than 180 degrees. But if we were on a flat Earth, and let's just I like the whole it's got stuff down here kind of a thing. All right, so if we're on a flat Earth, to home the great deep. Yeah, sorry, I'm getting distracted here. And I did the same thing with 2 measurements here and here. Then the angle between these, well, we couldn't even find it because they'd be parallel. And so if we summed these 2 and the angle in between them, we would get exactly 180 degrees every single time. So if Earth is flat, that's what we would expect to see. And if Earth is round, that's what we would expect to see. And it looks like this creator saw somebody do this measurement and prove through that measurement that Earth is round, and he's going to try to refute that. He's going to say, no, that's not what that means. And And to support that, he's going to go off on something like, oh, it matters about perspective and atmospheric problems and whatnot. All right, so let's have a look at his experiment setup here. Looks like he's about to do some surveying work here. Let's pay attention. Right about there.
Here's the target set at milepost 27.
Milepost
That target is
27.
at elevation 53. I'm sorry, 59.30. And then I set the theodolite up at milepost 28.
Milepost 28.
4.78 feet.
All right.
Which means that the telescope is at elevation 59.
And like I said, I know I should be fresh reacting because my previous video got lost. All right, so he set up one at milepost 27 and the other one at milepost 28. Now, what's interesting about that? We know how mileposts are numbered. And because we know how mileposts are numbered, we know the distance between these two mileposts is 1 mile. All right. Now, if we go and do some searching in a database or on the internet for surveyors and ask, when surveyors are surveying, do they account for the curvature of Earth? And the answer is not always. Frequently, across short distances, then flat is close enough and is a good enough approximation that they don't need to really worry about curved Earth or the Earth's curvature. So where's that line? Where do they draw the difference? How far is too far where they have to start accounting for Earth's curvature when they're doing surveying work? And the answer is about 11 miles. So if the survey work you're doing is less than 11 miles, they'll use a flat Earth approximation and it's good enough. But if it's 11 miles or longer, then they have to switch to an Earth curvature calculation to account for the curvature. So when we look at his particular test setup, I couldn't help but notice that there's only 1 mile here. What do you think is going to happen in the case where there's only 1 mile in between? Do you think he's going to get a really good approximation? Or do you think he's going to get a really good view of the angle here? Or do you think he's basically gone and said, I'm going to take one that's right here, and then I'm going to take the other one right here, super next to it. So close you can barely tell the difference, at least in the perspective of a spherical Earth. It's not the size of a potato, people. It's huge. If I make that small enough, I won't be able to tell the difference between the angle. And then it's going to look like it's flat. I bet you that's what he's going to do. And let's find out if that's what he does.
30. So the target and the theodolite are at the same elevation. And when I set my scope to be horizontal, I look through, and what did I see? I noticed that the horizontal crosshair is over the target. It should be on the target, right? It should be on the target, but it's over the target. Now you look at the sketch, and you start to understand why do we see the crosshair over top of the target from both ends of the line? Why is that? Oops, this one. There's the target right there. And this is the zenith angle is set to 90 degrees. In other words, that's set horizontal. So you look at the sketch here, and it's because the horizontal plane is perpendicular to your vertical direction at this end. So you're going to have this situation, and there's your drop of the curve. And then if I extend this line out, you're going to have the same situation. The horizontal plane is perpendicular to the vertical plumb line. It can't get any plainer than that. Okay? I think that's it. There's nothing really more to say.
Quote, if the vertical plumb directions were parallel, the zenith angles at each end of the line would sum to 180 degrees, but they never do. So here's his claim in plain English. Measure the zenith angle from A to B, measure the zenith angle from B to A, add them. He says if Earth were flat, these angles would add to exactly 180 degrees. They don't. Therefore, according to him, the Earth must be curved. And
Fair
this
enough.
is the hill they've chosen to die on. And if you don't understand optics or perspective, this might sound scientific, but here's what he forgot, and this is a fatal omission. The entire reciprocal zenith angle argument only works if objects never shrink with distance, if angular size never changes, if perspective doesn't exist, if the atmosphere does not affect visibility,
Called
if the
it.
plane does not rise.
Called
No
it.
angular size reduction. No.
He's angular size reduction, atmospheric scattering, perspective. What does that have to do with anything? That doesn't have anything to do with the problem. So So what he's saying, if to understand, okay, even in the experiment that we saw, with only 1 mile distance in between, let's see if we can model that better. All right, let's get rid of you. We've basically got the Earth is big, and so we have a very slight curve at this angle, and we've got these two spots. They're super close to each other, but I'm gonna exaggerate it just a little bit, just so you can understand better. So if this guy is pointing straight along his level, and his pointing straight along his level, then this is going to hit slightly above target, and this, coming back the other direction, is also going to hit slightly above target. If it was parallel, if we were in this situation, these would, a parallel line would go directly through the both, and they would both see the same point on each other respective side. But because we see them hitting slightly higher, we know that there's a curvature. Now, it could just be that in this particular case, the road is slightly curved. We don't really know. I mean, I suppose I could do a little bit of extra work on that particular road and just verify that that particular road isn't just curved just due to the terrain. But the reason why he's using the equipment that he's using is that even if the terrain is slightly curved or curvy, it's still going to be measuring parallel to the Earth's gravitational pull, and so that won't actually matter. It should still give you a good result as long as the elevation is the same. All right, so now you understand why they're saying it hits slightly above target, and that's why it's going to hit slightly above target. And now we get to find out why he thinks that doesn't prove that Earth is round, which it clearly does.
Perspective convergence. No atmospheric extinction. No ground plane rise. No contrast loss. No angular resolution limit. No atmospheric layers. No perspective lowering of distant tops. He assumes a cartoon universe, not the one you live in. They assume objects stay the same apparent height at all distances. That has never happened in the history of vision. To make this undeniable, let's use a 3D modeling program. These surveyors are all identical. Copy, paste, each spread out to even increments. Now watch what happens when the camera is in a realistic perspective mode. The farther they are, the smaller they appear. Their heads drop. Their entire body compresses downward on a perfectly flat plane.
Okay.
This alone destroys the reciprocal zenith angles argument. And now, orthographic mode.
No, it doesn't.
Nothing shrinks. Nothing lowers. Everything stays the same height, no matter how far away it is.
Hang on. He just said that destroyed the reciprocal plane's argument? No, it didn't. It didn't do any such thing. Let's go back a little bit. Because when he did this, like, come on, work with me here. Oh, now my phone's not going to behave. Okay, but
now watch what happens when the camera is in a realistic perspective mode. The farther they...
Right there. All right, he's looking down that plane, and what can you see as you look down that plane? You can see all the surveyors. Now, can you see 100% of the surveyors? Yes, you can. From this perspective, where he's slightly up off of the plane, he's slightly elevated with respect to the plane, but he can look down that plane, and looking down that plane, you can see all the surveyors. 100%, you can see their feet and their head, all the way down that line. I don't know if that's really clear, but you can watch the video yourself. They don't disappear feet first, like you would expect on a curved surface of Earth. So he's disproved himself.
Their entire body compresses downward on a perfectly flat plane. This alone destroys the...
They compress this way, but they don't disappear bottom first. So I don't know what his point is here. And even if they weren't, like, it still wouldn't disrupt this. This is what he's trying to disprove, is that these planes aren't parallel. And you can put a million prospectors on a horizontal surface and go out a million years, and all you're getting is this situation here where they're all parallel. You're not actually disproving this. All you're doing is demonstrating this. So I guess that would then count as begging the question. You're assuming your reality and then trying to coerce the math to fit that reality rather than trying to do the math and seeing which of the two is better supported.
Typical zenith angles argument. And now, orthographic mode. In orthographic, nothing shrinks, nothing lowers. Everything stays the same height, no matter how far away it is. This is exactly how the spaceball shills think your eyes work. Reciprocal zenith angles only prove curvature if your eyes...
We what? We think our eyes work orthographically? That no matter how far away things go, they stay the same size? No. I don't believe that at all. What's this guy talking about? That, my friends, is what you call a straw man. A straw man is when you tell people what they believe or make up a fake version of what they believe that we call a straw man, and it makes it easy to defeat. You defeat the fake version of their belief and not the real version of their belief.
And the world run in orthographic mode, which they don't. Watch what happens when a person walks away on flat ground. This is perspective 101. The top drops, the bottom disappears first.
Okay, so in this particular situation, like, how far are we talking about here? I mean, this couldn't be more than 100 feet. So, again, anything shorter than 11 miles and flat is close enough that it's not going to be a problem. So he's again comparing very short distances and saying, hey, look, it doesn't look like the curve would predict. Well, no, it doesn't. Under short distances, you have to go to 11 miles or farther before you really start to see a noticeable problem. And so, again, he's just not being very rigorous about this.
All of these poles are the same height, and this is what your eyes see: shrinking, dropping, converging.
Again, short distances. Sure.
On a flat highway, the road rises, the cars shrink, lower portions fade first.
Yeah.
This is the 3D world being projected into our vision.
And how far down that road can you see? If that road extended forever into the distance, yeah, I'm getting some glows from my Christmas lights on there. But if that road extended forever into the distance, you should be able to see Mount Kilimanjaro. You should be able to see Mount Everest in the distance. If you can zoom in far enough, you should be able to see the Statue of Liberty if the Appalachians weren't in the way. I don't know what continent he's on, but either way, if that road extended infinitely flat on a flat surface, you'd be able to see some kind of mountains or geography or something. It's not like there's no mountains on this planet. We know there's mountains on this planet. So the fact that he can look at that horizon and not see mountains, well, you have to ask the question, why not? Where are those mountains? You've disproved yourself again.
Parallel shelves converge. Verticals lean inward. Everything funnels to one horizon.
Short distances,
This
yeah.
geometry controls distant objects outdoors. A distant skyline compresses. Bottom fades. Top flattens downward. This is atmospheric extinction, light scattering, contrast loss, occlusion layers.
No, it's curvature. Because as you go farther out, you lose more vertical height, and it gets. I mean, the amount of the resolution goes down because of the atmosphere. There's more particles in between you and the distant object. It's going to get less clear, less focused over time, over distance. It's going to attenuate. But what you're not doing is accounting for, if you counted the height of those different mountains and tried to build a picture with a flat Earth perspective. Let me draw a picture. All right. Let's just erase that for a minute, because we've already got that in our head. If I had a flat Earth like this, and I had mountain A here, mountain B here, and I looked at it from somewhere over here, then I would see mountain A bigger than mountain B. Okay. So when I was looking at those two mountains, I would see Mountain A and Mountain B behind it. But what happens? You'll get actual pictures, and there was a famous flat earther who actually quit flat Earth over a picture like this when he saw that what he actually saw when he looked was not that. What he saw was the mountain here, and then the other one was behind it like that. And he was like, "Well, hang on a second, because my flat Earth model predicted that this mountain would be bigger, but it wasn't." And the only explanation for why that one was down there was curvature. This mountain was actually down there. And so he saw it there. So even though that's a taller mountain, the one in front looks bigger. That's perspective. That's real perspective. All right, let's continue.
Shrink, drop, flatten, and fade. People, telephone poles, cars, aisles, skylines, mountains, all obey exactly the same optical laws. And these laws produce zenith angle differences on any surface. Now that you understand real optics, let's revisit reciprocal zenith angles. They claim that if the Earth were flat, the angles must sum to 180 degrees.
Okay.
That only makes sense if the world has no perspective.
No, that doesn't have anything to do with perspective.
Elevation. This happens in your eyes, in cameras, in binoculars, in 3D software, on any flat plane. What are reciprocal zenith angles actually detecting? Perspective, atmosphere, compression, resolution limits, not curvature.
You can say all of that, but you're not proving any of it.
In orthographic mode, like a cartoon.
Yeah, you can call it a cartoon, but again, you're just making stuff up.
In the SBVR model, plumb lines are simply the downward vector orientation to the VR's fall-drop algorithm. Perfectly parallel, perfectly vertical, perfectly stable.
Okay.
But in their unverified theory of gravity, plumb lines can tilt any direction depending on local mass. Mountains. Density pockets. Mineral deposits, aquifers, voids, crust.
When was the last time you had a plumb line deflected by a local massive thing like a mountain? I don't think I've ever heard of anybody describing that. I mean, I can certainly check. Let's just do a quick Google search, right? We'll ask our favorite AI. Hey Grok. Do surveyors ever have to account for local heavy mass heavy masses causing significant deflections of the plumb lines? And it says, yes, surveyors do account for deflections of the plumb line, known as the deflection of the vertical, or DOV, caused by local heavy masses like mountains, dense geological features, or other mass anomalies. Okay, I'll totally take the L on that. Though the need and method depend on the survey's precision, scale, and location. Why does it matter? Okay. Local heavy masses unevenly distribute gravity, causing plumb lines, or true vertical direction, to deviate from normal to the reference ellipsoid. This deflection typically ranges from a few arc seconds, itty bitty, in flat areas to 20 to 60 arc seconds in mountainous regions, such as the Himalayas or the Shahalian experiment in Scotland, 1774, where the mountain mass deflected the plumb line measurably. Okay. So that is something you do have to account for. That's interesting. I didn't realize that the local masses could actually produce a significant... I mean, obviously, gravity is going to pull on stuff, and the more mass there is, the more pull there's going to be, but I just figured there'd be so much on either side that even if there was a heavy mass over here, there would be enough over here to offset it, so it wouldn't really produce a measurable problem. Let's see. So for high precision work, yes, you do need to consider it. Well, high precision, sure. But in the experiment that he did over 1 mile's distance, that's not going to be a significant problem. And the way I can argue that is by saying, under such a small experiment of 1 mile, whatever affects one is going to affect the other one equally well. I mean, if there was going to be a mountain close enough to affect the plumb line in that particular experiment, it would have to be like right next to one of them. And then presume that a mile away it's going to be measurably different in how it's going to affect the other plumb line. And I just don't see that as possible under an experiment as small as 1 mile across. So, all right, let's see. All right, well, I learned something new, but it still didn't. It still doesn't. It doesn't do what they want it to do. It doesn't disprove the math. It doesn't disprove what this person proved with the angles, and that is if there was angle, even on the scale of 1 mile, if there was an angle between the two, then it proves Earth is curved. As long as we can guarantee that at each position the plumb line was straight vertical. And again, if let's just totally steel man that and say let's say there was a mountain deflecting one of the two. Well, okay, but how would it not affect both? I mean, yeah, again, you'd have to have a neutron star sitting next to one of the two to deflect one more than the other one, measurably. And even then, you're probably going to deflect both a lot. So, under such a small experiment, it doesn't make any difference. It shouldn't make any difference. So he's bringing up stuff that would be really, really important in a very high precision project across large distances, and then pretending it's going to make a big difference on this itty bitty experiment that's only 1 mile across. So I just think it's a bad argument.
Thickness. So they literally admit plumb lines can point anywhere, but still demand 180-degree reciprocal zenith angles on a flat plane? Their argument collapses under its own contradictions. To believe reciprocal
No, it didn't.
zenith angles prove curvature, you must believe objects don't shrink with distance. Angular resolution doesn't matter. Perspective doesn't exist. Atmospheric extinction isn't real. Ground plane rise doesn't happen. Tops of objects never drop. Plumb lines only tilt for curvature. Vision works in orthographic mode. This isn't science. This isn't observation. This isn't geometry. It's fan fiction.
He's just throwing out words. He's not doing any work. He's not explaining why any of this applies. All he's doing is saying, if I say a bunch of really cool sounding words, then you're going to think that I actually did some research. And, sure, there's going to be people out there that are going to be convinced by that, but it's anybody who takes 2 seconds to look into it is going to realize that this guy's he's just saying stuff. He's not proving anything. He's just throwing out buzzwords. And then the assumption here that humans see orthographically, and that's something that the Globers believe? No. Where'd you get that? You're just making stuff up. So, yeah. All right. I know. Silly movie, and I'm crazy guy. I'm just a dad. My hope is that by showing that this completely unedited dad in Utah, and I'm not even hiding my name from you, totally debunked your theory with a whiteboard. All right, so it's not like this is hard. Yeah, you're throwing out a bunch of buzzwords, you're throwing out a bunch of stuff to make you sound smart, but you don't. It doesn't work. Have a great day. Jesus loves you.